Hi there, my name is Deidre Stanfield and I am a program manager for the Maine Conservation Corps. And I am here to talk to you about volunteer management. The presentation is about managing volunteers from start to finish. Think big picture. We're going to support you with the smaller pieces as they come up, but this is just kind of to talk about it up front. We want you to know who's available to help, what are some of the best practices, what is available for training, how do you approach or recruit volunteers, and what keeps volunteers coming back. So the goal of this presentation is to answer these questions and more. Who's available to help? So formerly, we had a position called the Community Outreach Coordinator. That position is no longer available. So you get me and you get Sarah and you get Lindsay, who is the field team program manager, and the field coordinators when they come on. So if you happen to see Community Outreach Coordinator in any of the documents, please ignore that and just ask us how we can be helpful. So what can MCC help with? We can help with volunteer management practices, retention, recruitment, event support, social media, and more. Basically, if you have a question, we want to be here to help. What do we need from you? To be able to help you, we do need some event info. So if you would like us to help promote events, we do need the information to pull that together. Well-branded photos are really important. As you can see by this image, we love having great pictures because it helps us tell the story of Maine Conservation Corps and helps volunteers understand the kinds of things that they might be engaged in. Green cards or volunteer service agreements are important for a variety of reasons. We're going to talk about those. And we're also looking for random things like guest writers for our blog, or sometimes right now we're looking for a videographer or office help or things like that. So we're on the lookout for volunteers as well. How do you get a hold of somebody? So basically, I am the point person for you. The best way to get a timely response is to email me. And I try to be really prompt. But please, if you don't hear from me in a few days, send another email, give me a phone call, let me know how I can be helpful. I tend to get caught up, and if I don't have a quick answer for your email, I'll flag it and I try to go back, but sometimes I just get caught up. So don't hesitate, you're not bothering me. Reach out again if you haven't heard from me in a few days. The core outreach is best for questions that are not time bound, so that goes to myself or Sarah. And the core outreach at gmail.com is best for sharing large files like high definition pictures or videos. We don't check this as often. I personally find that Google Drive is really hard to use for me to get pictures off of. So I've made a space in Schoology hoping that that might make it a little bit easier. But you can also send them directly to my phone, to my email, and we'll talk about this as the season goes on. But I really would love to have some great pictures of you. So please submit photos regularly. We really want well-branded Maine Conservation Corps AmeriCorps photos, action shots with the logo visible, PPE, group shots, working with volunteers, smiling faces. As you can see in all of these pictures, that is the old AmeriCorps logo. We are in need of some updated AmeriCorps logo pictures. And so while your shirts will still have this one, your masks have the new logo, and we have stickers and other ways for you to show that you're an AmeriCorps member. Personal protective equipment, we go over this in other areas, and some of you won't be doing trail work or in areas where you need all of this. Some of you have more scientific positions that you have your own precautions, your own safety equipment. But when you are engaging with volunteers and when you're taking pictures, it's really important that you are wearing the appropriate PPE for what you're doing. We can provide that, your host site can provide that. We want to make sure that you have everything you need to do your service terms safely. Here are some more example pictures, and you'll find some in the file as well. We do a wide variety of things, whether it's on an individual basis or in groups. Obviously, this was before COVID, as folks don't have their masks on. But this gives you an idea of really great pictures and what we're looking for. I did make a folder in Schoology for more photo guidance and a place to upload. And so next we're going to talk about volunteer relations. So if we were in a classroom right now, I would ask you to write down on a whiteboard different things that volunteers can help with. How are they helpful? And you might come up with things like projects, support with tasks, special events, more hands, added capacity, connections in the community, expanding the network, spreading the word, potential members, potential partners, and media and mission exposure. I hope you would come up with some of those things. And that's important. Why would we want volunteers? Well, how do you define volunteering? It's generally considered an altruistic activity, altruistic meaning doing something without the expectation of something in return. An altruistic activity that is intended to promote good or improve human quality of life. To promote good, to promote the general good. I think working from home is getting to me, as I'm sure if you're watching this video, it's probably getting to you too. In return, this activity produces a feeling of self-worth and respect. However, there is no financial gain. And there's a quote here from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Everybody can be great because everybody can serve. So I think it's important to think about how we each define volunteering. Have you volunteered? What were the benefits? What was the reasoning? What did you walk away with? What did you get out of that experience? And before thinking about particular aspects, it's important to clarify what we mean. And the lesson plan is based on 3 key ideas of the nature of volunteering. The first is it's useful to think about volunteering in the broadest sense as any community activity or active citizenship. And then there are times that we need a clearer definition of volunteering. I think it's important to think about these definitions because across different cultures, this can mean different things. And while, you know, the standard definition might be showing up at an organization and signing a sign-in sheet and accomplishing tasks that they want, in different communities, it can be checking on neighbors. It can be cleaning the sidewalk without that check-in system and just doing it because you're motivated to do it intrinsically. So I just encourage you to challenge your definitions and think broader outside of perhaps your worldview and what you understand as a contribution to community. Sometimes when undertaking practical tasks like formulating policy and procedures for volunteer involvement within our organizations or groups, it's important to be able to state clearly to whom such policy and procedures apply. So volunteering has been defined as the commitment of time and energy for the benefit of society and community, the environment, or individuals outside or in addition to one's immediate family. It is unpaid and undertaken freely and by choice. There are mutual benefits. Volunteering is not a one-way street. These folks aren't just showing up and looking to give. They're typically looking for something in return, intrinsic or extrinsic. So things within themselves that they're looking to gain or things outside of themselves that they're looking to gain. They might want to learn a new skill, learn about the organization. I'm positive that you can read these bullets. And acknowledging that that's okay. It's okay for a volunteer to want to get something out of the experience. It has to benefit them in some way or they're not going to keep coming back. Why do organizations want volunteers? Well, for one, any nonprofit or municipality, any of these organizations, they need more help. Frankly, there isn't enough funding for many organizations to do what they do without volunteers. So whether it's more capacity for special tasks, bringing about an understanding to the general public about the organization and what it does, impacts, potential for AmeriCorps members to get there, like whatever it is, the organization needs volunteers. And volunteers have a unique contribution to make. they make the organizations and client groups would they work, they come to it with a different feel. It is complementary to that of paid staff. Many organizations think of volunteers only in terms of saving money. This implies that if we only had enough money, we wouldn't need or want volunteers. So volunteers are sometimes tolerated as cheap labor or second-class staff. This has important implications for every aspect of how you will involve and manage volunteers, from which tasks they do to the resources spent on their involvement. So I think that it's important to think about why folks volunteer and helping them make an actual meaningful contribution. You might have somebody that shows up and you're like, what can I get them to do? And without taking into consideration what they want, sometimes we can give tasks to folks that they just aren't really going to enjoy. I volunteer and have volunteered in a bunch of different ways, and if we were in a classroom, we would have a different conversation about this, and I'd ask you about your experience. My experience was typically more one-on-one. And then I found AmeriCorps and Maine Conservation Corps, and that's probably the most organized kind of volunteering that I've done. But I did it because I wanted to do something different. I saw the pictures. I wanted to live in the woods. I wanted to kind of change everything about myself. I was at a crossroads in life, and I was looking for something different, and I certainly found it. And I'm really glad that I did. But I think that you'll find the more that you interact with volunteers that they're going to want something out of the arrangement. So what is it that they want, and how can you help them get it? Really developing leadership skills in general is really important, and this is one way to do that, and it's one thing that organizations are looking for more. You also make a difference. You are an AmeriCorps member engaging in a term of service with Maine Conservation Corps. AmeriCorps members serve all around the country to combat issues of hunger, literacy, disaster response, and environmental protection, just to name a few. There's much more. A focus of your term of service is engaging others in volunteerism, as well as to increase the impact and share the love. So this is part of the reason why volunteer management skills are so important. There are different types of volunteers. So in an ideal world, your best volunteers will stay for life and help contribute to the culture and overall health of your organization. But in many cases, individuals feel more motivated and confident volunteering for a specific project with clearly outlined objectives and both a start and finish date. That isn't to say they won't continue volunteering once the project is done, but it does give them the ability to coordinate their schedules and commit to a specific goal. Retention must be earned, not expected. So it's important to think about the different kinds of volunteers and that they both have value. Ones that are going to show up in it every day at your organization or once a week for the rest of their life, but also those that just want to do something really specific in a short window of time. So ideally, volunteers will stay forever, but that's not always the case. So types of volunteers, we have ongoing volunteers. These can be a wide variety here. Ongoing volunteers fill many roles within an organization. They may work independently or with other volunteers to meet the goals and objectives of a program. Generally, an ongoing volunteer will have considerable knowledge about the program, be motivated to help succeed, and commit long-term service. There's also episodic volunteers. So they can do single-day volunteer work days or special events. And today there may be more people interested in being episodic or random volunteers. There are volunteers who are involved with a single or limited activity, event, or program on a short-term basis. Volunteer administrators often find it difficult to manage these kinds of volunteers, and why do you think that that would be? Any thoughts? I can't hear you, I know. But I think that having these kinds of volunteers, it's difficult to kind of have a plug and play event ready to go. It can be a good number of people. Like in this picture, there's a dozen folks. And what do you have that a dozen people can just drop in and do at your organization? I always encourage people to have kind of a standing list of things that volunteers can accomplish, and that you kind of start jotting that down at the beginning of your term for things like this. But it can be difficult. Managing volunteers is difficult. It's not always easy. It's a skill that you need to practice and learn. So the recruitment and promotion of volunteer activities. We need to know how we can support you with volunteer needs. We need to know what info to relay. We need to have a time frame to do that. So as soon as you know volunteers are needed, you should let us know so we can help you walk through the process. How do you figure out what you need? So the first step is to consider is, do we need volunteer help? Then you can think about the next steps. How do you fit volunteers into your organization, and what kind of things can they do? You can look at what folks have done in the past, what themes have been present. You can consider what the volunteers themselves need to bring to the table, skills, experiences, characteristics, and then develop. So you stop and think about the accurate and useful volunteer positions and event descriptions. So what are the events and what are the roles that these folks are going to fill? Once you have that, if your organization has an ongoing need, consider writing up volunteer position descriptions and recruiting for a more long-term committed volunteer. So one example would be a volunteer to visit nest boxes and count swallow eggs every Monday during the nesting season. There are all kinds of volunteers that want to interact with wildlife, that want to take a look at water quality, that want to help with managing invasive plants. There's a huge variety of things that they can do. But these roles, they need to have a title, somebody who's going to supervise them, a description of what to expect, their primary responsibilities, the skills and experience needed, and the time commitment. We have in the Schoology folder, there's a PDF about ADA role description. So how are we ensuring that folks who may have disabilities are also able to identify if they'll be able to meet the expectations of the role? So we try to list things in a way that helps all folks feel comfortable in applying. And then, so now that we've discussed how they can help, how do you find them? So you have, at this point, you should have an idea of what they can do, either an event or position that they can fill. And like I said, this is a broad overview. We can talk about those specifics when you get into that situation. But let's talk about volunteer recruitment. There's a few different ways. So there's warm body recruitment, targeted recruitment, and concentric circles recruitment. So warm body recruitment, if you need a huge number of people for a short period of time with minimal qualifications, you can get like warm body recruitment, people that are just ready to go. You put out a flyer, you speak to a group, you use media. You might have an organization that you're familiar with that has to do volunteer hours. So basically you connect with them and say, hey, we have these awesome events. Targeted recruitment is more if you need a small group, you need a specific skill set, and you want to identify the best fit possible. So you really have to think more about this one, thinking about what you need, who can provide it, how do you communicate with them, and what would motivate them. So I can't think of an example off the top of my head right now, but working through these questions and asking them, like, if you do have a scientific assessment and you do want to do water quality monitoring, you're going to need somebody that's going to follow your SOP, that's going to follow the standard procedures so that what they're collecting is collected in a way that's going to be useful. If you get folks that aren't willing to be trained, that are going to rush things, that aren't going to pay attention, then what they're doing isn't going to be as useful. It could actually hurt your organization because that's taking time away from a project that you needed help on in the first place. So think about the kinds of folks that you want to be recruiting to do these things. And there's a place for everybody. Concentric circle recruiting is if you already have a large volunteer base, you already have a background, you want to support your mission and vision. You identify people and then have them contact others. So you're moving from the center, moving outwards, having other people use their networks to try to get people coming in. For flyers, so here are some great examples of flyers that we have. We really encourage you to not use a Gmail account. That is the big thing, the big take-home message at the moment is that don't use Gmail, please. Use your state email or maybe a form where people can send in their information and register. Look for creative ways to work around that. But here are some examples of flyers. And we can help you with that process as well. There's a variety of tools that you can use to make really, really nice looking flyers with minimal effort. It's also important with a flyer to know these questions here on the left. So where is it? When is it? How many people are needed? What things will they be doing? Some contact information and what to bring. So this is how we typically will help you. And here's an example of a title, what folks need help with, what the date is, what the time is, what to be prepared with, and what we will provide. How to contact somebody and the Facebook event so that they can register. The media requirements, like I said before, be careful with your contact information that you're not using a Gmail, but you also need to use the appropriate logos. And in this one, these two are outdated. So AmeriCorps and Maine Conservation Corps in this image are outdated. It's part of the process. We change logos frequently. And it's important to note these things, but I also like to be transparent that these are the details that need review when you're going through this process. You might have an old form or template that you can use to make this. You just want to double check and make sure that you have the correct information. So it is important that we're staying on brand with both Maine Conservation Corps and AmeriCorps. So there's a couple ways, and I think that COVID has made this second option a lot more, people are more likely to see it now than ever, I guess, if you're going digital. So paper flyers, printed ones can be done at your host sites, schools, university, community centers, court boards, recruitment events, employment counselors, because sometimes folks need current references. That's another reason why folks might volunteer. Digital flyers can be shared pretty broadly these days. So social media, if you let us know, we will promote it as well. You can do an online press release, and then there's a bunch of volunteer websites listed here that might be helpful to you. Some companies incorporate volunteerism with paid days off for their employees. So making connections and reaching out, your organization might know if you've had a partnership in the past, and this is part of that assessment, is learning what has been done in the past. But don't count folks out. Think about these different places and how they might be willing to send some folks to volunteer for the day. Also capitalize on pre-existing events. So there are some noteworthy dates. These should be roughly the same. And just in general, what are days that people might have off that they want to come and volunteer with you? Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service is coming up. It's January 8th right now. That's a week after your start date. So I'm not pushing it for you guys to have to do something, but it's something that in the past we have done. So just think about dates and ways that people are already thinking about conservation or the environment or whatever project you might be engaged with. Some recruitment tips. People like being asked to volunteer. Announce why your organization needs volunteer help, but invite your best leads personally. You will always be more successful in inviting people to do something they can picture in detail rather than ask them vaguely to give us time for free. That means never starting a recruitment pitch with anything like volunteers needed. To do what? What are you going to ask them to do? If they think that they're going to come and work with a wildlife organization and get to snuggle bunnies and stuff like that, and you have them cleaning cat boxes, they might get a little upset. So be specific in what you're asking for and make sure that you're delivering. Make it worthwhile. When you invite someone to volunteer, you're asking them to share their disappearing discretionary time. In other words, do they play golf or volunteer with you, visit friends, or come to your agency to work? Therefore, you want to be the volunteer opportunity that's fun and appealing. You do not have to make the work sound easy, though. It can be enormously satisfying to participate in a strenuous group effort. The Peace Corps in the 1980s had a campaign, was the toughest job you'll ever love. So it's not necessarily about being easy. It's just about being transparent and letting them know what they're getting into. No is not never. So you want to start recruiting as early as possible. And if you ask an individual to volunteer and they say no, don't take it as rejection. Their schedule might not permit, or they might not feel that it's a position that they'll enjoy. Continue contacting though, and raise awareness for other things that you're doing. Different volunteers sign on at different phases of their yearly schedule and their circumstances. Focus on the volunteer benefits over the volunteer needs. Don't pitch your opportunity with "we need your help." Focus on the benefits your volunteers will gain, like spending time outside, getting to be part of something bigger than themselves, meeting new people, and learning a skill. You want to make sure that the process for signing up and getting information is easy and that you are responsive and positive. As soon as potential employers reach out, potential volunteers, not employers. As soon as potential volunteers reach out, your job is to make a good impression, to try to win this person over to your cause. Green cards. So we have a rundown in Schoology about these, and I just want to bring them up now to let you know again how important they are. So green cards are an essential part of managing your volunteers, and nobody should be volunteering unless they've completed one of these forms. The purpose is to take information as a record of their work. It's a contact card as well. We collect data with these cards, and we provide legal coverage. So we have insurance and liability for injuries. They really need to complete these before starting your project, and you need to collect them from every volunteer that's helping. It's a two-sided form. So the front side includes personal contact info, insurance information, a photo release, and a signature. The second side includes the project site, demographics, hours and dates, feedback, information about their experience, and if they want to be contacted. The hours and the dates of service are the most important part on the back of this form. If they do not fill out the back, please fill out this one section. That is definitely the most important. And how do you submit them? We'd like you to submit all volunteer cards to MCC immediately after your event. You can drop them off or mail them to 124 State House Station, or you can email them to me directly. So like we said, and I know that this is redundant, make sure that they fill out the front before they begin. We do, if there are minors that are volunteering, we need parent signature on the card. 15 and under needs a parent or guardian on site, and 14 and under needs their own insurance. They cannot accept the Serve Maine insurance policy. If a group is volunteering together, considering sending cards to be filled out beforehand. So if you have a school group or something like that, you can send it to the, the field team, or not field team, field trip leader, or whoever's going to bring these folks over. And then at the end, redistribute the cards and have them complete the backside before they leave. You really should schedule these things as part of your orientation and then closing and reflection. So when you bring them or send them into us, And here it says COC. I'm going to have to update that. But just send them to the MCC office. You can send them directly to me. Ignore this part where it says COC. And if you're running low, just let us know and we will send them to you. They are important because we're funded through grants, and volunteer statistics are a big part of what keeps us funded. It leverages the service that you are providing. So it makes your impact bigger when you have more people engaged in the same kind of projects that you're doing. We also like to maintain communication with volunteers because they could become future members and to return to future projects. And you or us like to say thank you. It's a big deal. Volunteer retention and appreciation. So ideally, like we said before, we want folks to come back. We know some of the reasons that volunteers like to get involved. So they want to learn, they want to give back, they want to have fun. They might need work or school credit. So with all of this stuff to gain, why do they leave and not return? So feedback from unsatisfied volunteers. It's really easy for a volunteer to walk away unsatisfied with their experience. And what are some ways that these problems could have been prevented? I feel like a lot of this is having a good orientation, providing clarity, and making sure that people have connection. Really helping people feel heard is one of the biggest ways that you can help them feel a part of. So taking the time to walk around and be a part of is important. How do you ensure that they come back? Get them connected to your organization. Make sure they leave with a sense of satisfaction and enjoyment. Show them, that you're committed and that you're going to be there, and that when you're gone, somebody else is going to pick that up. Making sure that what you expect of them is really clear, and that you're providing feedback and letting them know when they're doing a good job or when they need to maybe shift a little bit and focus on a different part. I just have to laugh sometimes. I look at these slides a little too much. But it's easy for folks to walk away and you don't know why they left. So again, just think about connection, asking them, communicating, making sure that you're present. There are also ways to get your volunteers more engaged. So there could be more opportunities at your organization, including leadership roles. So maybe you have this really great group of core volunteers and they tend to do well under your instruction, but maybe somebody is standing out as a leader and wants to take on a role with more responsibilities in that area. That's okay. Helping them become leaders is important as well because they might be there after you're gone. AmeriCorps terms have a definitive start and end date. So any way you can build capacity for something that will last after you're gone, that's important as well. And also understanding that being flexible, everybody, like we said before, has something different to offer, but they may have crazy schedules. They may have other things in their life that are happening. So ways that you can work around that are important. And also just make sure that you have a way to connect with them when you have other events and activities so that they can be involved with that as well. And ask them to share the impact. Ask them to make a social media post talking about how good they felt about their day and what they accomplished. That can go a long way. I hope that this was kind of a broad overview that's not leaving you snoozing in your seat. I'm trying to make these online activities as exciting as possible. And while a lot of them are interactive meetings, I'm just trying to record this video so that you have a general idea about volunteers. I am positive that you're going to have a great term of service and that you're going to get a lot of volunteers and that you're going to get that experience of working with others. So if you have questions, please get a hold of me. I want to answer your questions. I want to be present. And I want to be helpful. So let me know how I can do that for you specifically, okay? This is the end. All right. Thank you for watching this training, and I hope you have an awesome rest of your day.